Hello, everyone. Today, we're excited to announce a partnership between LiFi and Everclear, and we're having Philip and Jim from LiFi. Hey, guys.
Hey Dima. Hey Arjun and Jim.
Hey, what's
We
up,
called.
guys?
Hey, great
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you
us on.
here. Yeah, it's really exciting partnership, and we just really want to talk about it today on this quick live stream. And to put things into context, maybe I'd love to kind of start from, yeah, what are your kind of solver and intent plans? Because obviously we know about the Catalyst acquisition, which is incredible news for the space. So yeah, if you can kind of set the stage for everyone here, like where are you guys heading right now? And yeah, what are your intent plans over the next 3 to 12 months?
Maybe I can tell the story a little bit, Jim, how everything come together, and then from there, I guess you can take it. So essentially, LiFi always intended to build an order flow marketplace, but marketplace execution is very hard because you have a chicken egg problem. You kind of need both sides to appear. So the typical way to solve this is by making that multi-sided market one-sided. So you start aggregating one side yourself. We have seen this with everyone. Like Uber was driving the first car rides themselves. Airbnb, the founders asked their friends to give their apartments. Right? So you somehow have to bootstrap that market, at least on one side, so you can attract the other. Once you have the other side of the market, you can then open up the network and let it be an open one. An intent system is exactly that. It is an open marketplace, but in order to get there, you first need to at least get the distribution. LiFi has been doing that. So we simply aggregated manually on one side and attracted a lot of distribution power on the other side. At some point, I made an investment into Catalyst as a business angel. Probably, I think, it was probably my first angel investment back then, or first or second. Met Jim. I followed the journey for 2.5 years, and then when they pivoted into something new like today's Catalyst, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is exactly what you need at the right time. DeFi has been sitting out this whole intent narrative for quite a while. It's been a hype for 1.5 years, and we were like very, what should we do? When should we do it? And then this opportunity came along. I was talking to Jim and Alexander, and it was a perfect match at the right time. And yeah, from there we went. And the future for LiFi for a long time will be hybrid, being an aggregator and an auction, until the server market is sophisticated enough. And to close the loop here, I think one important key part of servers being able to be sophisticated enough is a good rebalancing solution. And that's where Everclear comes into play.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Yeah, Jim.
So happy to like expand on that and look forward. And thanks for the context, Philip. So right now we basically are taking all of the Catalyst tech and we're refactoring it based on two dimensions. The first dimension is we're making it a lot more customizable. I think based on feedback, there are partners that LiFi has that would prefer certain attributes to others. And so we've basically added a level of modularity and customization to it such that you can have different auction types, whether it's on-chain, off-chain, different verification types on cross-chain verification, and also different basically like escrow implementations, whether it's a standard escrow, whether it's 7683 compliant, or whether it's a resource lock, et cetera. And so that's been kind of our big effort from Refactor side since the acquisition. And then on the solver side, we are building our own solver to participate in this broader intent system. And so, learning from best practices from the space and from our network on how we want to build that. And we're aiming for launch of both these things in the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah, well, and thank you guys for setting the stage here. I guess from that we can basically talk how LiFi is going to use Everclear. Could you share more?
Yeah, I can do that. And so, like I said, we built this intent protocol, and after the acquisition, we've basically modularized it to a different customizable pieces. We actually wrote an article a couple months ago called the intent value chain, which basically talks about all the different pieces that are touched through the life cycle of an intent, from intent expression to all these different pieces. And one of the pieces at the very bottom was solver rebalancing. And so solver rebalancing does seem to be, at least from my vantage point, one of the most painful and arduous and operationally heavy processes of running a solver right now, that basically precludes a lot of individuals from participating in this huge solver opportunity, right? And so when we were building this modular system and we were identifying the value stack, we recognized that one of the largest pain points of the entire life cycle was very much on the rebalancing side. And so that was always something that was really kind of top of mind for us as we were building the system of, wanting to find the right solution, wanting to find a series of correct solutions in order to fix that, outside of just like telling solvers to figure it out, right? And so I think where Everclear comes in is very much on that piece, right? We've evaluated a number of ways that a solver can rebalance, whether it's individually, either on chain or via centralized exchange, whether it's through existing bridges, just a standard transaction. And what I really like about Everclear is that you guys basically thought about the same problem and clean sheeted a very elegant solution in order to solve it, right? And so you're solving specifically the issue of rebalancing for solvers. It looks different than a standard cross-chain transaction because solvers have different parameters than users, right? They're much more cost conscious as opposed to state conscious. And so, when I heard about the announcement, I imagine maybe a year ago, that was something that was really awesome, and wanted to dive in more into it. And I really like the way that it gets better and better as more volume goes through it. And so what we're going to be doing with Everclear on LiFi is basically, with the intent system that we're building, Everclear will be the primary and recommended rebalancing option for all our solvers, and it will be the option that our in-house solver will be using for rebalancing between different chains.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and thank you so much for kind words, Jim. Indeed, rebalancing is a huge pain, and we just realized that this is where the space is heading, and without addressing that, it might be really hard to scale intents and really figure out interop. Maybe another question that I have that can be also helpful to learn about for listeners is, what are the basically benefits for you guys when you use Everclear, in simple words? Philip, maybe you have a take on that, or you, Jim?
So on what Everclear is for us?
Yeah,
Sorry.
what are the key benefits basically?
I think it's this almost coincident of one's approach, right? It's like the more you have the same signal and egg problem that we have, but once you have that distribution, you just have huge efficiency gains. It's a direct network effect, essentially, and direct network effects are incredibly powerful and really hard to go against. So it's a king discipline of business models you're trying to execute there, and obviously that network effect benefits each participant in that network, and that's just the strength of it, right? So it's an amazing idea, but it needs a decent amount of push. So that's where LiFi hopefully can make a difference.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that because Jim, you gave a really good overview of Everclear, and thank you for that. And I think actually, Jim, you were also one of the first people I remember saliently talking about Everclear, back shortly after the announcement at a bunch of conferences. You were kind of talking about how Everclear fits into the stack, and so it's awesome to see that you guys at LiFi have bought into this shared vision of yes, it is an extremely difficult uphill problem to beat the chicken and egg of creating a clearance system, but if you do actually create it, especially if the ownership of that can be widely distributed, right? If you do actually create it, everyone benefits. Everyone can get way better pricing for rebalancing, which of course trickles up to pricing for users, performance for you guys. It improves margins for all of the solvers that today are basically operating on razor thin edges, right? So yeah. Thanks for kind of chiming in about that.
Yeah. Okay, and maybe just to follow up on that, What's like just top one thing that you guys like about Everclear? I'm curious in your take, guys. Is it change passion? Is it like prices? Is it something else? Yeah, what's that?
I think it's really early to actually feel the benefits of Everclear, right? So maybe a bit historically, Connext is probably the oldest relationship our company has in this space. Also before Everclear was Connext, right? For those who don't know. And back then, Connext gave us a grant, and that was the enabler for LiFi to exist. Gave us a salary after a month of failed bootstrapping, or actually years of failed bootstrapping. That was really, really meant a lot to us. So Connext has come a long way. And I think what is great about Arjun here specifically is he has always been building. His mind was always around public goods. Like, he is still one of the very few founders that has that crypto punk attitude within him, and there are very few founders to find. So and public goods are hard to fund, they're hard to sustain. So if we can actually pull this off, and Everclear gets to a point of having a mode in terms of a direct network effect, which is hard to go against, then we have actually found the first one of the very few cases in our lives where we see something that is net beneficial for everyone while being very public good oriented, and then still enjoys the network effect. It's just that's amazing to me. There are very few projects in the space that can say that. And also Connext/Everclear is venture capital funded, right? So there are obviously mixed incentives behind this whole company and execution, to be fair. But still, I know how the leadership behind Everclear thinks, and so I'm just very. That's what, and I think this is what really touches me in a sense, and that makes it worth supporting. And the benefits you're going to feel later once we have more power behind it.
So thank you for that. That was really awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Jim, any thoughts from you on like expected benefits from the integration for internal solver?
Yeah, so I can talk about the expected benefits. I can also talk about what I like about Everclear, which is like somewhat different. One is like really tactical, and one is slightly more high level. But I'd say the tactical benefit is exactly what Arjun was saying. Like, it's just better pricing ultimately, or better margins, right? But ultimately, it's going to be better pricing for the end user, in my opinion. When you look at like a solver and where their edge is, some of it comes from maybe pricing, and some of it is intelligence from that dimension, but a lot of it is really just sound operations, right? You run a really, really tight operation, you have really low latency on different parts of the stack, and you're also really mindful of rebalancing, right? You can amortize all these costs, and you can build this kind of multivariate calculation that optimizes for all these different pieces of like how often do you need to rebalance for what amount, and what are the net inflows and outflows of different chains. And I think the really cool thing is that you can actually outsource that as a solver to Everclear, especially at run rate. And you don't really have to think about that. And so you kind of take a little bit of edge out. And so everyone benefits from this, industry leading rebalancing operation. And therefore you can price more tightly, right? I think maybe initially you can take a bigger margin because your costs are much lower from the rebalancing side, but ultimately I think the margins kind of trend to the same amount as right now, and so that it's just better pricing for the end user, which is really exciting, right? You basically want this to be really, really seamless from a UX perspective in the future for cross chain. So that's like the direct benefit. I'd say what I like about Everclear at a higher level is that, I think, again, when we were architecting or re-architecting this entire intent system, and we were looking at the intent value chain, and we were looking at rebalancing, we kind of went through an exercise of clean sheeting what a rebalancing primitive would look like. And basically our insight was that rebalancing isn't really that different from a normal intent, right? It's just a solver that is a different user, and they have a different risk profile. or they have different parameters that they're trying to optimize for. Like I said, they very much optimize for margins or costs rather than other dimensions that an end user might care about. And once we land on that insight, we were thinking about, okay, how do you basically design a system that allows for that? And then we revisited the Everclear docs and had a conversation with you, Arjun, kind of with that new insight in mind, and realized that you guys arrived at the same exact insight a year earlier, right? And so that was really cool to see that you guys definitely thought through it from a first principles perspective and basically landed on the same solution. But you guys were a year ahead of us, so we figured might as well use yours instead.
That's hilarious. Thanks for sharing this story. Yeah, that's pretty sick. Cool. Well, guys, maybe the final question on our end. Interop in 12 months. What do you think will happen? Any predictions? And would love to hear you all, folks.
I believe we're going to see strong consolidations. I think we still see new bridging projects. You're going to be surprised. We still see actually new models. Also, coming out of the fact that more and more tokens are multi-chain native assets. So we have mint and burn capabilities and so on. So there is something there. There's also this whole stablecoin craze going on. So there will be more and new bridges. What we also see is that top level applications are tapping more and more into non-EVM. If you remember, like the past 3 years, it was all about EVM, and then Solana came around. But now we also see traction around Sui and Bitcoin. So it becomes more multi-chain. That opens up the opportunity for more specialized bridges, especially for routes like Sol to BTC, for example. But nevertheless, we're going to see, especially within the EVM context, a very strong power play between bridges like Stargate, Cross, Relay, D-Bridge, maybe LiFi as an aggregator on top. It's becoming more of a fierce market. It always has been kind of, but it has been so fragmented that everyone could just grab market share wherever they want it. And now that market share grabbing is getting harder. So players become more competitive. That's what we see, at least. Like behavior becomes more adverse, and people, it's just like you can tell.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely competition is increasing, and consolidation, is something that we can expect for sure in the next year. Jim, Arjun, anything to add to that?
You go first, and I would love to jump in after.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take it from more of like an experience perspective as opposed to like a business marketplace landscape perspective. And so I've been saying this for a few months now, I would say, if not for most of this year. But I do think that Interop for the end user will be solved in the next 12 months. And it's kind of like a, salacious, clickbaity statement, and is a bit hyperbolic at times. But I do think that broadly, it will be very, very seamless, especially for short tail routes. And I say that because, sorry?
Are you the first person to say this statement?
I'm the first person, or is that sarcasm? Yeah. And so, I genuinely think that there's like so much tooling that is available now that's basically, or is going to be coming out in the next few quarters, that's going to allow for a lot more seamless, operation through different chains. And so if you have, with the Pectra hard fork and the emergence of resource lock implementations like the Compact, if we move towards this like smart wallet paradigm, this resource lock paradigm, and then we tap into this like broad network of solvers that are either sophisticated, they're using all these tooling stacks like Everclear and like maybe like Nomial, or they're like lending protocols for liquidity, you can start having this kind of chain abstracted or balance abstracted experience for end users where they hold assets on one chain, and basically you have all these entities that are providing all sorts of actions on other chains, right? Not only bridging, but also swapping, lending, other on-chain actions, which becomes really interesting. And then you add on the mint and burn piece that Philip was talking about, whether it's OFTs or NTTs, or whether it's just Circle's own USDC in their own implementation of some of these primitives I just talked about, and with V2, it becomes really fast, and it touches basically the top assets that anyone would probably want it to touch, right? Certainly, if you want to go to long tail, if you want to go to new chains and long tail assets, that might be more difficult. But I do think for the vast majority of use cases, this is going to be incredibly seamless.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely would echo a lot of the ideas here. It's cool to see that we're finally getting to this point. I remember when, Philip, when we first started working with you guys, back in 2021, at the time, I was on a whole tirade of I didn't want to, when we initially started working with LiFi, for anyone watching the stream, LiFi actually initially was one of the key teams building out the Connext bridge UI, because we didn't want to be a bridge. We just did not want to be a consumer facing application, because even at the time I was no, consumer facing bridging is NGMI. It's just the most clunky experience to be I have to leave my application to go to another application to bridge and then come back to the application. For years now, I think everybody in this space has been waiting for this kind of next step of Interop gets solved. And by that, what we mean is, the experience of going across chains is natively built into an application. You don't ever need to really think about it as a separate thing. You don't need to think about what chain that you're on, right? And it feels like we're now finally getting there, which is awesome. I do think that now what faces us is this interesting integration hurdle, right? We need to move past the mindset of okay, we're bringing the LiFi widget into an application, which is already a huge step, right? It's already saving a ton of time and clicks for the user, but going a step beyond that to there isn't even a widget. It's just natively integrated. So when you click deposit, it's using Catalyst to just deposit instantly on another chain. And I think that brings me to my second kind of hypothesis around this, which extends on this, is I think that to a much greater degree than any of us really expect, I think AI is going to end up becoming a very important part of intents and interoperability for blockchains in two ways. I think one, every single intents protocol should be building an MCP server and should be trying to get people to integrate into basically just vibe code integrations into their apps, right? You need to drop the overhead of integrating an intent-based chain abstraction into your application to basically a few minutes, because then it just becomes a default for all of these apps, right? It's not an additional thing that they have to do. And then I think the second thing is I do think that we're going to start seeing more and more autonomous solvers. There's obviously a lot of value that comes from market making teams running solvers, but you probably get 70 to 80% of the way to there today just using AI and just bots. And it's, to me, it feels like it's only a matter of time until that happens, especially once you have things like Everclear that make it possible for these autonomous solvers to programmatically rebalance, right? Rather than having to go and pull funds out and manually send them through centralized exchanges and manually handle administrative relationships. And so I'm kind of excited by that. I think that's a type of accelerationism that is going to lead to Interop in general becoming a much bigger market category, and everybody actually seeing the real benefits of this stuff, seeing a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for years. But yeah, I think the teams that will win will be the ones that actually lean into these trends a little bit and lean into hey, we can actually make these changes a lot faster than we used to be able to.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Arjun, we got a comment. People asking you to make a thread on what a full stack dev should do in this AI FOMO world. So you should definitely do that. Okay, well, guys, we're running out of time, so let's start wrapping up. Philip, Jim, thanks so much for being here with us today. We're super pumped about this integration. So yeah, let's launch and see what the actual benefits are. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.
Thank you too. Looking forward.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.